If they'd like to.
I actually started auditing.
Now you're the resident expert.
I know what they go through.
But yeah, I think so.
This is not coffee.
All right, by the clock, it's just after 5 o'clock, so we're going to start our study session. Summer, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Blevins?
Here.
Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Siragusa?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts? Here. Commissioner Stallings?
Here.
Commissioner Orr is here, and Mayor Mason.
Here. Item number 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss? All right, item number 3, study items. 3.1, financial update for the fiscal year 2023-24 budget and the Call Lake Water Supply Program. Aaron?
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We're going to start off with CAW, and then we'll move into the budget to discuss where we're at through the end of January, and then where I'm kind of projecting that we're going to end the year in some of these funds. So for Call Lake, this is all data through the end of February 29. So most recent stuff that we have coming out. And as you can see, we're continuing our trend of coming in slightly higher than where we have budgeted. July through February, we had budgeted $7.1 million, or we collected $7.1 million in revenue, and our budget was $6.6 million. So we've exceeded our budgeted revenue by $454,000, or 6.8% increase over budget. This is slower growth than what we were anticipating when we budgeted. Overall, it's only a 1.35% increase year over year for the same 7 months. So that trend is slowing down a little bit in sales tax growth. When we look at the amount of collections that have come in, overall, we have collected sales tax since the inception of the sales tax being voted in of $64.9 million. We've earned just over $1 million in interest on those funds for a total revenue of $65.99 million. To date, we've spent $43.5 million in loan payments on the various OWRB loans that are up there, and they're split out by each of those loans and how much has been paid. That leaves $22.5 million available in funds to pay out. There are $6.95 million in debt payments that are due this month on the various loan payments, and then there's the remaining $15 million is invested in laddered T-bills that mature over the next year at all over 4% investments. This is the status of the loans related to Call Lake. Again, the first one here, we have the 2016, has been fully drawn down. The 2018 FAP has been, $1.3 million remains, so it's 97% drawn down at this point. The 2018 SRF has been fully drawn down. That was a $20 million loan. 2019 FAP has not been drawn at all. There's $54.9 million sitting in that debt project fund currently. And then the SRF loan, the 2020, the $205 million loan, there's $19.1 million remaining on that, and 90.67% has been drawn. So overall, where we sit, total loans and interest is $340.2 million. We've drawn down $264.8 million, leaves the remaining $75.4 million. Since the last update in December, we have added interest of $698,000. We've drawn down $9.4 million in the last 3 months. So a net change in the program is $8.7 million over the last 3 months since the last update.
Aaron, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
I want to go back to the 7 months of sales tax.
Uh-huh.
And you may not be able to answer this for a couple of reasons, but that slowdown, is that across the board? Is that in certain sectors? How is that broke out? Where's the slowdown happening?
Yeah, I don't know that information offhand, but that's definitely I can look into and report back to you whenever I do the next update for you on sales tax by sector.
That really is not truly important to us from the project, right? I mean, the project is essentially on budget, and you have the budgeted amount. This is above and beyond the budget.
Correct. Yes, this amount is the revenue that's coming in 1% sales tax, and that is being used to repay the loans.
It's all dedicated just for that at this point.
Correct. And so if it slows down and doesn't keep up with the growth that we had projected for the debt payments, then we will have to supplement more with utility revenues to make those debt payments in the future than what was projected when the project was originally started. So it is important to have that growth.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get to, is
Yes.
that was built in from the day one, that there would be additional growth. You were counting on additional growth.
We were accounting on additional growth in sales tax. I think when I went back and looked at those projections, it was about a 2% increase year over year. Now, overall, we're more than 2%, but just there is that slowdown, and we need to be cognizant that we may have to send more utility revenues to make the debt service payments on Call Lake as a result of the slowdown if it continues to see stagnant growth.
Okay, thank you.
And
Yeah.
how much did we anticipate the sales tax growth that we needed to stay up with the debt service? Was that a 2% growth or?
2% growth is what we had in there. There was also, it was always going to need supplementation from utility water revenues to make the project work. But 2% is what we counted on to keep kind of the capital at the level that we were wanting to keep capital at for the rest of the city and not eat into that capital replacement budget.
Okay, I understand.
Okay. These are other two sources of funding for this project. We have congressional funding that has been awarded on this program of $4 million. To date, we have not drawn down any of that. We're still working through some of the requirements through HUD, because that is who is going to be administering these funds, working through some NEPA and some other processes with them. And once all of that's fleshed out, we will get those funds fully drawn down on a probably a 1 or 2 month invoice from Garney as soon as we can get through those technicalities that we need to address. And then we have also awarded a little over $5 million in American Rescue Plan funding for some supplemental budgets that we've done for CAW. And we have not drawn down those yet either. As soon as we finish drawing down the 2020 SRF loan, I look to draw down these two sources before we move over back to the FAP to get these two drawn down. So you may see those by next quarter having some drawn down. The $205 million loan.
Real quick question, if you'll back up, just so I'm clear. The American Rescue Fund, I know that that's drying up nationwide. Are those funds in our possession?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
They
Good
are.
enough. Thanks.
So as we draw down the 2020 loan, we can only draw down 95% of that. 5% has to be held until the project is completed and released by DEQ. So even though it's 19 million, we only have about 9 million more to draw before we'll move over to those funding sources. And then that 5% of that 205 will sit there until we're done. So it won't be fully drawn until the completion of the project. This slide is exactly the same as last time. From December through the end of February, there were no additional loan payments. So we're still sitting at total principal and interest payments made of 41.5 and then in $2 million in loan origination fees. Total principal outstanding, 318.8 on the program. Budget, overall budget is $343.8 million. This is an increase of about $700,000 since the last update. There's been 3 contracts that have been approved for Call Lake. One was a little over $300,000 for Envirotech to do some additional testing on the timeline that we needed for QA, QC stuff. And then there's been $354,000 contract that you guys approved for security from Orion out at the wastewater plant so that we can make sure that we have the security we need on that water treatment facility. And then there's another one to Luckinville for about $54,000. That was some tie-ins along Chestnut with the parallel line that's the 24-inch. So there's, I think, 4 tie-ins there for that amount. So that's the increase in the budget from last time to this time that you see. We have had actual expenditures on the program of $271.3 million, and we have encumbrances outstanding of $72.5 million and $23,000 that is unallocated at the moment. Total payments made to Garver is $16.62 million. Garney has received $189.51 million. That leaves Garver's remaining contract at $4.4 million. Garney's remaining at $67.3 million, and we have $250,000 in encumbrances to other firms or smaller contracts on the project. Any other questions on the Call Lake program funding update before we move on to the current year budget? No? Okay. These financials are only through January 31st. We have not fully prepared financials yet for February, so this is where we sit through 7 months of this year. I'm going to go over where we sit as of January 31st, and then the last slide we will go over where I'm projecting that we're going to end the year as of today, I guess. Right now, we have 22 funds that are budgeted for. We have 14 funds that have exceeded their projected revenues to date, and 8 funds that are not. The ones that are highlighted in green have met or exceeded where we expected their revenues to be through the year. And the ones in red are below target of where they should be if it was split or spent evenly throughout the year. There are some specific reasons on all of these are kind of causing it, but I just want to go over the ones that are below target and talk about some of those reasons why those things are happening. Special projects is Fund 10. This is police department. It has to do with unknown amounts of awards from county, state, and federal seizures, and they spend based on what's in the savings account that they've built up in their fund balance, and they have not brought in as much, and it's really hard to know the timing and what that's going to be. So they have a pretty stagnant budget dollar as far as what's coming in so that they have enough appropriations to spend as they need to from those funds. So there's no concern, I guess. Health fund, this one's trending a little lower, and a lot of that has to do with turnover. We have employees come in, come out, and then while those vacancies are there, we're not sending as much to the health fund because those employees are not using the health fund. So although you see it's a little bit low here, the expenditures on the next slide are also a little low. Then we skip down to Fund 32. 32 is EEDA, so Economic Development, and that is low right now because the end of the year is typically when we get all the TIF funds from the county, and so it really skews. It's a big amount that comes in from the county to be paid out, and so until we get later in the year, that one's going to remain to be under where it would be. Fund 40, 41, and 42 are all based on timing of awarding construction projects. So that's always going to be all over the place. I'm not concerned about any of those 3. currently. And then Fund 60 is the Event Center Fund. Revenues, we have a couple things going on. We have lower revenue coming in the Event Center, but we also have a pretty big gap coming in hotel tax, which is starting to be concerning. So we need to start looking at maybe what's going on there, if there's anything we can do to help bring that revenue source back to where it has been previously. And then Fund 80 is sinking fund, and that's just a matter of we get those revenues typically from the county again towards the end of the year. So as far as the ones that are lagging behind, I don't really have any concerns with them at that point right now, other than the Event Center. Whenever we talk about the ones that are above budget, you can see we have some that are pretty significantly over that 58.3 mark that we should be at 7 months through the year. Big one, airport, you see we have 195% of where they should be. They've gotten about $3 million in grants that weren't budgeted, and then they've awarded some things. So we do anticipate coming back at a later date and asking for an appropriation for some of that money for them to spend and do some things with the contracts that are going on out at the airport. Other than that, VDA is at 103%, and that's just they get all their funding up front one time in the year, and then they've earned some interest on what's sitting there.
Can you go back to 60 and dissect that a little better for me?
Yes. So in Fund 60, there are basically, it's kind of like a department, there's a couple of departments that work under Fund 60.
Okay.
So we have the OVG contract to manage the event center. We have Visit Enid, who operates under there. And then we have the capital of taking care of our building that's separate for the event center building that it remains on the city's shoulders. And so what happens typically is hotel tax and rental income from that fund comes in to help all three of those departments run and be able to do what they want to do. Whenever we look at OVG, they are coming in under in revenue, but they're also coming in under in expenses, but not as much. They have some fixed expenses that cost a lot to run the building, personnel, and heating and air conditioning and insurance and some of those things. Then we have Visit Enid. They get all their money up front as a department. And so whenever I'm saying, hey, revenue is coming in less, we need to be able to pull some of that back. That's an area, because of how they're contracted as a vendor, I don't have that mechanism built in where I can talk to some of these other department heads and say, hey, revenue is coming in less, we need to cut your budget by 10%, or have those types of conversations as an outside entity. It works a little different. I don't know how to explain that one as well. And then, that hotel tax that's coming in is helping to supplement all three of those, the building, Visit Enid, and OVG. And so 2015, hotel tax was coming in at $1.8 million. Right now, this year, I'm projecting we're going to have less than $1 million in hotel tax revenue. That's an $800,000 swing that we don't have to do the operations that we had just back in 2015. It's a big concern. And there's not a lot of other revenue sources to be able to make that up. And that's a lot to make up in the fund.
Well, relative to the hotel, we pay him a subsidy below a certain level, right?
The hotel tax?
Are you talking about the hotel tax or the
Yes.
hotel itself? Is that a separate issue?
That's separate.
And that's not involved in this
No,
line?
that's not involved in this fund at all.
Okay.
The room rate guarantee is an economic development incentive that's in that fund.
That's what I was
This
trying-
is just people staying room nights in our city is taking a significant hit. And because of that, I mean, when you're cutting the revenue almost in half, we got to be able to deal with that. And so it's going to take more money, or we have to find ways to increase or mission people to be able to address that problem.
Yeah, that's a great point. That has nothing to do with the operations of the Stride Center. That has everything to do with there's less people, less staying in hotels, spending money that paid directly to the city. What used to be 1.8 million, it's $1 million. So that's an indication that the travel industry and the people that were spending nights in rooms, it has not recovered, and that's what Aaron is telling you. So whatever we have, 30 hotels in town that pay in, every month, the hotel tax, when we add that up, it's projecting to be less than $1 million this year than, and it used to be, I don't know how many years ago, $1.8 million.
Yeah.
So that is also in this fund and part of what she's talking about when there's projected deficit there. And so that's an important distinction, separate from the Stride Bank Center and its operations. Visit Enid is a separate standalone entity in there. I believe the budget's around 475, and they do good work doing what they're doing, but they, just like the accounting department and administration, don't generate much revenue. So that's what she's telling you.
Does that address your question, Mr. Stallings?
That cleared it up for me. I'm sorry, I was misunderstood.
No, you're good.
That the other
Well,
fund
you
was-
understand that that's the major impact. That $800,000 that we lost, you know, that's per the vote of the people, 3% shared with the Expo Center, 5%, or the 5 cents of every 8 would come to us. So that's $500,000 less that we have to do what we were doing. And so has to come from somewhere. There's only so much fund balance that the Event Center has. So we're going to continue to see this be a problem unless something happens with that revenue source.
Yeah, and just because you asked, the other question you were asking really is covered under EEDA, I think Fund 32. Isn't that where we pay the hotel room rate guarantee, which you were talking about?
Yeah.
In year 1 of the hotel, we paid a room rate guarantee. In year 2, we did not. And in year 3, it is not looking good. 10 months in, I think, meaning that the occupancy of that hotel has been under 40% for, I'm going to say 10 months, six or 7 of the 10 months. 3 months it was over 40. So what that means is we're probably going to be paying a subsidy at the end of the year for the hotel, but that's out of a different fund. That's out of the EEDA fund,
Yes.
which you passed by and I think was good, or in the black, or
For revenues, yeah.
revenues.
Yeah. Next slide is expenses and where we were through the end of January. Again, red is those who are coming in at that point over the 58.3%, and the green are the ones that are coming in under. Fund 10 for general fund, a lot of that cost is sales tax coming in higher, so therefore the transfer over to EMA for the 1%. Capital and the 1% called lake sales tax is higher. Some of it's timing on some contracts. There's a lot of things that are paid one time early throughout the year, and a lot of transfers that are one time early throughout the year. So 60% as opposed to 58, pretty well on track. Airport, again, you see here 95%, and that's what I'm talking about, that we're going to need to come back and do an appropriation for that $3 million extra that they have sitting there. They're getting to that close, 95%. They've exceeded their sales for jet fuel and avgas pretty significantly again this year, and so we'll be bringing back an appropriation to let them spend those additional dollars that they brought in so that they can continue to provide that service. Golf, they're at 65% of their expenses. They've had several things going on out there, a lot of irrigation problems and repairs, and but the good news is their revenue is higher, so that may be another fund that I have to come back and do some appropriations on to be able to take care of the maintenance that's needed out there, but they do have the funding to be able to supplement for that. Fund 30 is Street and Alley Fund. That is coming in based on projects that are being worked on. A lot of that is asphalt and the concrete repair program. So we're spending those dollars, which is good, one of the main missions of the city. Fund 31, EMA, we're at 59%, basically right on track where we should be. VDA, we're at 76%. And that's just the whole contract for the year for our consultant, Mike Cooper, is encumbered. So skews it a little with such a small fund. Again, Fund 40, 42, 43, 44, 45, those are all, again, capital project funds, so they are based on timing of when those contractors turn in invoices and when those encumbrances are awarded. So we'll track to make sure we don't go over there, but I'm not concerned. Good working relationship with engineering, we'll make sure that that stays where it needs to be. Fund 65, for fire departments at 63, it's a little high. Whenever I looked at their stuff again, a lot of it was software renewals, property insurance, some things that are one-time expenditures. And then Fund 70, CDBG is at 96%, and that's because as we went through that funding process, we got all those contracts awarded up front. So those are encumbered or paid to those vendors at this time. And so overall, we are sitting at 73% instead of 58%. But I feel good at where we're at because of a lot of grant funding, construction progress, and construction contracts in progress. The ones that I do anticipate based on this that will come back and do some type of appropriation or need to do some type of appropriation this year are airport and golf, and that's because they're selling more than what we had anticipated. General fund to adjust for that sales tax, and then the event center with that shortfall in revenue that we're going to have to address. And this is kind of what it looks like. I know one of the things we talked about or was talked about during budgets was not necessarily liking that we budgeted for some deficits during the year. And in the first column, second column, excuse me, it has FY24 budgeted surplus deficit. So you can see total for the year, we had budgeted $6.4 million in deficits for all of the funds. Where we sit, as I finished out projections today, is I'm showing that we're actually going to finish the year with an $8.5 million surplus. So you see a swing of $14.9 million. So I just want to talk through a few of the funds I have highlighted so you can see some of the drivers that are causing those big swings. So I want to first, event center we talked about pretty significantly. It's about $500,000 off that we're going to need to cover. We had budgeted to have a balanced budget, but at this point, based on where everything sits with sales tax, hotel tax and event center revenue coming in lower, about $500,000 shortfall of where we projected to be. That's the only one that's coming in worse than where we had projected in the budget. Every other of the 21 funds is finishing in a better position than where we had budgeted originally for the year. There are three highlighted in yellow up there. Fund 12, which is special projects for police. Fund 32, which is economic development. And then Fund 45. All three of those funds were specifically budgeted to spend down fund balance in those funds. Fund 12 and 45 are budgeted that way every year. We collect from developers or we collect from the seizure funds, and then we spend them out as we have projects that are valid uses of those funds. Fund 32, EEDA had built up a little bit of a surplus in that fund, and so we made the cognizant decision when we did the budget this last year to draw down some of that fund balance instead of continuing to build up that fund balance in that fund. And even though all of those were budgeted at a deficit, they're coming in a little bit better, or projecting a little bit better, slightly better on those yellow ones. The ones in green are the ones that are doing pretty well, actually. We had budgeted $1 million deficit in general fund. Right now I'm projecting we're going to have $1 million surplus, about a $2 million swing. About $1.5 million of that is due to sales tax coming in higher than where it was budgeted. And then we have another $300,000 coming in higher in franchise fees, and then we're coming in a little bit lower than budgeted overall when you take together all those departments that make up general fund. The next one, Fund 20, is the airport fund, and again, you can see we have budgeted a $23,000 surplus, and right now we're projecting $3 million, but we're going to spend most of that $3 million on those projects. So we'll come back and do an appropriation that will bring that surplus down because we'll be spending those dollars in this year to get those projects done that have been awarded or talked about with grant dollars. Fund 31 is EMA. We had budgeted a $2.6 million deficit. We're projecting right now to come in at a $5.1 million surplus. There are a handful of things that are making that up. Again, sales tax is coming in higher. We're projecting about $750,000 more in revenue coming into this fund for sales tax, half of that belonging to Call Lake and half of it for capital projects. Utility revenues are coming in about $2.3 million higher than anticipated, with the bulk of that being water and reuse water. We have $2 million that we've drawn down in Call Lake funds. And then the additional 2.5 is the difference between what we took out in the industrial park loan of $5 million and the 2.5 that we've spent so far. The other 2.5 for industrial park purchases is still sitting in that fund. So that's part of what you see in that big swing there. And if we make some of those purchases out for the industrial park and spending on Call Lake, then that will go down by that 4.5 that's sitting there. So it can be influx, but definitely going to be a positive surplus instead of a deficit as budgeted at the beginning of the year. And then the one other one is the police fund, and they had budgeted a $1.7 million deficit, and based on the fact that we have vacancies, significant vacancies, we're going to come out still with a deficit, but about $750,000 better than where we had projected. So overall, I think we're in good shape. I would ask that we consider appropriations in the future, and I'll bring those back for your consideration for airport, golf, any unplanned funding from grants that may happen between now and then, general fund, and I know a couple things that were talked about during budget that we should maybe look at spending some of those dollars on for the cities. 2% is some purchase of some properties on Randolph that got cut from the budget, but I know there's some discussion about that during budget time. And the other thing that was talked about and was cut out of the budget was the pump for the irrigation at Meadow Lake Golf Course. And that was one that we said we would come back, and if we have some money that we would look at potentially awarding that so that they can get started. They've had some pretty significant repair cost so far this year and trying to keep that up and maintained. So for your consideration, we'll bring that back at some point. And then Event Center is the only other one that we've got to figure out a way forward on how to address that long term so that we don't keep seeing that slide come down in revenues for that fund. There are questions on the budget and where we sit for this year's current budget?
Nope, I'll just make a comment. Gerald and city staff, Aaron, you all have done a great job.
Thank you.
You've done a great job. We're in a good place. And Mayor, this is the reason why we need to continue. Enid been on the move, increasing the quality of life for the community. We won't have to worry about these things. It'll pay for itself.
Agree. It concerns me about the sales tax revenue a little bit, but
I can look into that and provide an update to you guys on the categories of sales tax and what that's looking like. Yeah.
One quick question. On the hotel tax, are we down from last year or just
Yes.
overall? So how are we doing at this point compared to last year at this point? Is it
We're down about
make it-
$100,000.
about how much?
100,000.
Okay. Can that be made up if, I don't know, something happens? Or is it just too late?
Probably not.
I don't know, there's only
Rent
two
more rooms.
revenues. There's only two sources of revenue in that fund. And so, well, actually, there's three. There's hotel tax, there's the event center, or there's a transfer. And so, we can't get it from hotel tax. Either the event center has to make more money, which they're struggling to get events and get the support needed, or it has to be a transfer from the city. So if you want to make it up from a transfer from EMA or the city, we can gladly bring that as an item too.
Thank you.
okay.
Well, I think just to recap, we brought this item specifically, Commissioner Blevins, because you asked for it, and I'm glad that you did.
Thank you.
I know there was some concern when you guys approved the budget last May, because we approved some deficit budgets. At the time, we told you that our experience is normally that revenue is better than our estimates and expenses are less. I think at this point, March, about 9 months into the fiscal year, you've seen the results of what we said. So does it mean it's always going to be like that? No, because it didn't just happen by accident. I think that's a tribute to the financial staff, the staff of the city, and you as the governing body. And it's something to be appreciated, because it may not always be that way. You could talk to Commissioner Stallings about how it used to be when he served a term before and they didn't have money. So it's good to have money, and it's good to fix things, and that's what we're doing. And so daily, we're trying to, it seems like daily, actually it isn't quite daily, but frequently we're putting out projects, completing projects. When you see those traffic cones, we just heard from the chief engineer at ODOT today that something about traffic cones, and he rattled off for about 5 minutes about all the ODOT paid projects that are going to be happening here in town. You know, that's not an accident. This is a city on the move. And so I'm very proud of all of the staff and the city commission for making it happen. Thank you.
Good job, Aaron.
Thank you.
Are you going to do the update also on, okay. All right, just go right ahead. On Meadow Lake Park Master Plan.
The next one.
3.2.
Huh?
3.2.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did, okay. 3.2 on the budget calendar.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
one's
I'm
short,
with you.
going to be short and sweet. And so what you have before you is the proposed dates that we are planning on having budget meetings for the FY 24-25. That says 23-24, but it's the 24-25 draft budget. We plan to have that out and available April 22nd. We're proposing a special meeting on Thursday, May the 2nd. At the regular study session on May the 7th, we propose to discuss the budget fully for that study session, and then have the budget hearing during the regularly scheduled meeting for the public to be able to comment and weigh in on what they would like to see with the budget. And then a third meeting, special meeting at 5 o'clock again on the 9th. The week of the 13th through the 17th is the Washington, D.C. trip, so we don't have any meetings scheduled for that week. It's also Enid High graduation that week and some other things going on. So we are asking for tentative approval of the budget on May 21st, and if at the 6:30 regular meeting, and if not, we're proposing that we have a 24-25 special meeting to approve the budget on the 23rd. Are there any conflicts with any of those dates, or that we need to reconsider? Just want to make sure we're going to have a quorum and everybody here. Budget's a really important topic for the city.
Comments? Everybody think they can be here? Okay.
I will say that I think this is going to be a tough budget year. I really do. You just told us that sales tax is up about 1.5%. That's, we budget conservatively, so I don't know what that means our projection will be, but I can predict with 100% accuracy we will not have enough money to do everything we like, so we'll have to make hard choices. And the staff will help me do that, and I'll fulfill my role to present a budget on time according to the calendar, but then you guys get to dig in and make sure that the priorities are correct and all of that. So there'll probably be some long meetings. You've been through them before, so thank you for being ready.
All right. So you don't want to do the update on the, no.
I'm going to let Jason
okay.
handle that one. Thank you.
All right, Jason, the 3.3 update on Meadow Lake Improvement Plan.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Go from budgets to where we can spend the money now. As y'all are aware, you know, one of our main parks here in town is Meadow Lake Park. And it's kind of, wrong term, but it's running, it's showing its age. There we go, that's a good way to put it. And it's needing some improvements. And so Morali actually put this presentation together. He apologizes for not being able to make it tonight. But he put this presentation together over what those improvements are that we see, and so that can kind of open up the dialogue. between us and y'all, and so that kind of get a big picture scheme together over everything together. So any point in time you have any questions or comments, please just stop me and fire away. The topics that we're going to cover today are the stormwater and drainage, parking and pavement, trails and sidewalks, and then ADA restrooms. The drainage is kind of the biggest driver in what's causing the park to kind of age over the years. It's the lake has silted in, and erosion around the banks of the lake has silted in, and so it's caused some issues. The lake is a lot shallower than it needs to be, and things of that nature. So three targets of what we'd like to accomplish to improve the drainage is to dredge the core channel, and then dredge the lake, and then build bank protection so that we can stop that erosion from silting in the lake. That kind of the first phase of the drainage. Basically, we'd want to, kind of the idea in a lot of things is on drainage to work from the top down. And so the top part of the entire portion of the project is the core channel. If you guys aren't aware, the core channel runs from basically 412, and it runs down back to the backside of the lake. It's approximately 8,200 feet long, and the dredging or the cleaning out of that would consist of about 4 to 5 feet of soil be removed from the majority of that channel. Second phase that would be included in the drainage project would be actual dredging of the lake. The lake is about 8 acres, and right now, I mean, that gives you an idea. I don't know how deep you all think that lake is, but it's actually pretty shallow, and it shouldn't be. It should actually be about 20 feet deep. So it's going to require about 15 feet of cut in order to get the lake down to where it actually belongs, to the depth it actually belongs to. And then the third final kind of phase of it is to protect the shores so that the erosion will slow down, and the silting in would actually slow down as well. And so we have a couple different options that we're looking at right now currently that's in design and are kind of out there in space and in our brains. But sheet piling, concrete piers, all kinds of different kinds of ideas that we're looking at to where we could basically hold the banks back so they will stop eroding in. We kind of want to phase it to where we kind of get our largest bang for the buck. And so following the drainage projects, we would want to improve the parking lots and the pavement that's out there. Obviously during the project, would be a lot of construction and stuff coming in and out of the park, so those asphalt and chip seal parking lots will not hold up, so will need to be improved following the project. So they need to be improved right now as well. But so part of that project would be new parking, new striping, and new ADA paths that are needed. Additional part of it would be following the installation of the shore stabilization products would be about 1,000 foot of trail that would connect from up by the dog park over on the west side, run along the north shore, and connect back over here. I think that'd be a pretty cool feature. And then the other, the final item that is improvements that the park needs is new ADA bathrooms, both at the dog park and over by the fishing dock. So the timeline that we came up with is next year we would begin the design, and then we would, once we get a design kind of encapsulated, we would begin draining the lake, and then begin by dredging the core channel. Yes, I said drain the lake, Mayor. I saw your head shoot up. I'll address that, a little bit of that here in just a minute. So then the next year, we would dredge the lake, and then following that, we would build the shorelines, the stabilization, and then we would resurface and trail and get the restrooms completed. In order for the lake to be dredged in an economical fashion would be for the materials in the bottom of the lake to be dry. That way you're not hauling off water for no reason. And so kind of the plan that we're looking at would be draining the lake, And then that way, it would be drained a year ahead of the actual work. Maybe not, but it'd be draining a year ahead of the work. And then we would be able to start dredging the project, dredging it after the year after that, so the material will be cleaner. So we're looking at probably three-ish years of the lake actually being drained and the majority of the park being closed. For sure, the north side.
So Jason,
Yes, sir.
that dirt that's taken out of there, can it be repurposed anywhere else, or has it been wet for so long that it's just not suitable to go into another project, or?
We don't know at this time, if that's kind of a fair way to say it. Typically, you're right, it's usually not useful for much other than topsoil, and so when you get that large amount of topsoil, it takes a lot of projects for that to get spread out over. We have a couple ideas that we're looking at what to do with that soil once it's removed. Just kind of one of the ideas that we're looking at is actually where we do the shoreline stabilization, the walls would actually be higher than where the existing edge is now. So we could use that material to backfill behind those walls. So kind of the answer is right now, we're not for sure, but we've got some options that we can do with it.
And then the dredging of the lake, is that something we do ourselves, or do we contract that out?
We contract that out.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd take too large of equipment.
And one last thing, I'll let you go on. The reason my head popped up on that, down at Altus, their big reservoir, I don't know if you're familiar with that. They're doing a project, they drained that, waiting on it to get dry. It looked horrible. I was down there, weeds growing up, it was horrible. Mm-hmm. Animals getting down in there and stuff like that. And then it sat there forever, because every time it rained, we didn't have any rain, then we had a lot of rain for a long time.
Yes.
So, it just concerns me, which maybe there's no way around that. I don't know how else you would do that. Yeah. So it was just an eyesore, and still is. I was down there a few weeks ago at a funeral and drove by there to look, and still an eyesore. So.
Well, we kind of in the initial design phases, we want to explore all the options that we could possibly have, and there is some wet dredging options and things like that. It's just trying to get it to the most economical path. That's what we're kind of making the assumption that that's probably going to be the worst case scenario for looks, but probably the most cost effective.
I just, whenever I drove by the first time, I thought, boy, I'm glad that's not us. Now here I am.
That's right, yeah.
So the lake's got to be dry during the shoreline protection?
Yes, sir, yes.
So we're talking no water in Meadow Lake Park for 3 years, 2 years?
I don't know that we can answer the exact timeline. Ideally, what we would need to do, and probably need to start doing, is some fundraising.
Yeah.
Beating the bushes, grants, appropriations, because we would do our very best to minimize that timeline. It's spread across fiscal years for financing capability, which makes sense. What would be difficult is I don't think we would want to open it up and leave it open for 3 years. I don't know how long Altus was open. Stillwater's dealt with this with Boomer Lake. I don't know how long Boomer Lake was open, but ideally what we would do is raise, is that $6.5 million? I can't add all that stuff up, but it's probably, that's a lot. And I hope that it would end up being $6 million, but until we bid it out, that's when we'll find out what it really is. So to answer your question, it would be open for quite a while, but we would want to minimize that. And obviously, before we did anything, we'd come back to you with the plan, because you're going to have to approve the individual projects as they come, and the money for it.
Where's the water from West Boggy Creek going to be diverted then?
It's still going to come through there, basically, but it'll just be channelized down to a single channel.
Okay.
So, or creek, or whichever way you want to say it.
Yeah.
Yes, and I forgot to mention, the fish are planned to be relocated either to Government Springs or to the water plant. What do we call that pond? At the
Service center.
Service center, yeah, the service center pond.
And the domestic ducks and geese too, that can't fly?
Yes, we would get them taken care of.
Okay.
Yes,
Either
I did,
there
I
or
did.
to a farm on the south side.
I do know where to place to go with it. I didn't where there was domesticated ones.
Sadly, residents dump their
Oh.
domestic ducks and geese there, and they can't fly.
As Gerald alluded to, there's kind of the cost breakdown for it over the next 4 years, 5 years. Just around $6 million is what we've estimated. That's all I got.
I know that on some land acquisitions that we've done, we've talked about when there are certain streams that come through an area and the Corps has to approve all that. I'm assuming we're still talking about the Corps of Engineers, right?
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes.
That being said, would there be any grant money that they're able to provide on?
I think I can't say definitively, but I think that there are, we would want to be looking into all sources at the state and federal level. Since this is stormwater related, maybe there is something. I don't know, but that's part of what I mean by fundraising. We would, this is a very expensive project. It would be difficult to pay out of our regular capital improvement project because this would be half the capital improvement program if we were going to do that. And there's too many other things that we need, so.
Maybe look into like wildlife conservation as well.
We'll look into any grant that doesn't have strings that are more onerous than the value of the money that we get out of it. So, but yes, wildlife, DEQ, EPA.
I'm going to do it by dredging this and doing the shore protection. We think that will help that silt not come in for, I mean, how long do we think that could last for us?
So if I remember correctly, and who Gerald or Scott can correct me, I believe the last time the lake was dredged was about 15 years ago. And so basically, we looked at a 15-year life of the bottom. So I can't speak to exact numbers,
Right.
but yes.
We would hope to get that.
Yes, because
plus,
I can't
yeah.
control what's coming in from the stream, but I can control what's coming in at the park. So it'd have to be longer.
Okay.
Jason, how many cubic yards of dirt do you think?
I have not ran the numbers, sir.
You have not ran the numbers? Well, I was thinking, because we were talking about Government Springs South, where we needed a buildup, where stuff's coming through on the south end. That's a lot of dirt down there, and it looks a little bit bigger than what we were talking about on Government Springs South as far as the size of where we need some dirt.
That's an option we can look into.
One could benefit the other
Yes, that's something we
without
can look into.
costing us money.
It's a lot of dirt. I think it was about 20 years ago, slightly before my time, or a little more before my time. I understand the dirt. If you go to the Meadow Lake Dog Park,
Right.
there's a big built-up berm back there. I've been told, the legend is, that's the silt that came, and I believe it, that's the silt that came out of Meadow Lake Pond. Meadow Lake.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
I think that time we tried to do it ourselves.
We learned that we do not want to do it ourselves.
Okay. All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's our last item on the study session. We will adjourn and take back up at 6:30.